The giant crystal halls of the Galactic Council buzzed with angry voices. 47 different alien species had come together for an emergency meeting, and the air was thick with tension. The place looked like something from a dream waltz, made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light, and seats that seemed to float in mid-air. At the center of it all stood a massive Zephyrian, his green scales catching the light as he towered over everyone else. These reptile-like aliens were known for their quick tempers and sharp claws. This particular Zephyrian was clearly furious as he slammed his fist down on the speaking platform so hard it cracked. "The humans are taking over everything," he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. His yellow eyes glowed with rage as he looked around at the other aliens. "They build their little towns and cities everywhere they go. Our space, our planets, our resources, they take it all like it belongs to them." In the human section, Commander Jiho Park sat perfectly still, but his hands were clenched into fists. He had been watching these proceedings for hours, and every word made him angrier. The humans weren't taking anything that didn't belong to them. But try explaining that to a room full of aliens who saw them as nothing more than annoying pests. Next to him, Ambassador Mingy Kim looked calm on the outside, but Jiho could see the stress in her eyes. Her knuckles had turned white from gripping her electronic notepad so tightly. She had been working in alien diplomacy for 15 years. She had never seen the council this hostile toward humans before. The insect-like Cathera representative tried to speak up. "These aliens look like giant mantises, with multiple arms, and huge compound eyes that could see in all directions." "Honored delegates," she began, her voice making clicking sounds as she talked. "Perhaps we should think about this more carefully before we make any big decisions. Be quiet." The Vorthri delegate's voice cut through the air like a knife. These crystal beings were made of living rock and mineral, and when they spoke, it sounded like glass breaking. "We've already talked about this enough. The vote is clear. We will use population control measures to deal with the human problem." Jiho couldn't stay quiet anymore. He stood up slowly, his military uniform crisp and clean among all the strange alien clothing. "What exactly do you mean when you say population control?" His voice was steady, but there was steel behind it. The entire chamber went dead silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to look at the small human section. Some of the aliens looked curious. Others looked annoyed, and a few looked almost hungry. The Cathar representative's many eyes focused on Jiho and Minji, unlike the other aliens. She seemed genuinely sad about what was happening. She had studied humans for many years and understood them better than most aliens did. She knew that humans were not the savage beasts that others claimed they were. "We tried to warn them," she whispered to her assistant, speaking in her own clicking language. "We told them what humans are really like when they get angry, but they would not listen." The Zephyrian delegate smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Population control means exactly what it sounds like. Human, your kind breeds too fast and spreads too far. We will help you, slow down." Other aliens in the chamber began to murmur agreement. The Nexari, who looked like walking crystals, chimed in with their bell-like voices. The Thrakari, massive bear-like creatures, growled their approval. Even some of the smaller species seemed to support the idea, but the Cathara representative shook her head sadly. She had seen human history, studied their wars, learned about their capacity for both creation and destruction. These other aliens had no idea what they were about to unleash. "They think humans are weak because they ask for permission," she continued to her aide. "They think humans are soft because they try to solve problems with words first. But they have never seen what happens when humans stop asking and start taking." Ambassador Minji finally spoke up, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The human colonies are built on unclaimed worlds. We have broken no laws. We have signed every treaty you have put in front of us." "Treaties can be changed," the Vorthri delegate replied coldly. "Laws can be rewritten, and they will be." The Cathara representative looked directly at the human section, her compound eyes filled with what could only be called pity. In her own language, she whispered a warning that her translator deliberately did not pick up. "Run. Run now, before it is too late." But Jiho and Minji were not the running type. They're representatives of Earth, and they would not back down from a fight, even if the odds were stacked against them. The morning sun was just rising over New Busan colony, when the first explosion shook the ground. Sujin Lee was drinking her coffee in the communication center, getting ready for another peaceful day on Kepler 44 to be. This planet was one of humanity's most successful agricultural colonies, with golden wheat fields stretching as far as the I could see. Then the sky turned black with alien warships. Sujin dropped her coffee cup and rushed to her equipment. Through the window, she could see dark shapes moving through the clouds like deadly shadows. These weren't the usual trading ships that sometimes visited the colony. These were military vessels, and they were dropping bombs on the farming communities below. "This can't be happening," she whispered, her hands shaking as she turned on the emergency communication system. The colony had no military defenses. It was just farmers and their families, trying to make a living on this distant world. The first building to get hit was the school. Sujin watched in horror as the place where children learned to read and write disappeared in a ball of fire. Then the medical center exploded, and the market where families bought food for their tables. She grabbed the microphone with trembling fingers. "Emergency beacon. This is New Busan colony calling Earth." An explosion nearby made the whole building shake, and dust fell from the ceiling. "We have unknown attackers. They came from nowhere. ... Through her headset, she could hear screaming from other parts of the colony. People were running in all directions, but there was nowhere to hide. The alien ships were hunting them down, one by one, like wolves chasing sheep. "Tell Soul Command." Her voice cracked as another explosion rocked the building. Through her window, she could see the Chang family's house burning. Mrs. Chang had just had a baby last month. "Tell them about the families, ... the children, ... The communication center took a direct hit just as she finished speaking. The last thing Sujin saw was a blinding flash of light, far away on Earth, in an underground bunker, deep beneath. Seoul Director Tae-ho Kim was working late in the military command center. The room was filled with screens showing information from human colonies across the galaxy. Most of them showed normal, peaceful activities, farmers growing crops, children playing in parks, families living their quiet lives. Then the emergency signal came in. Tae-ho had been a soldier for 30 years. He had seen war, death, and destruction. But when he heard Sujin's voice describing the attack on New Busan colony, something cold settled in his stomach. These weren't soldiers being killed. These were innocent people. Before he could fully process what was happening, 2 more emergency signals came in. Similar attacks were happening on Proxima Centauri, C and Wolf 359b. The pattern was the same. Sudden attacks by unknown ships, complete destruction, no survivors. His young aide, Lieutenant Minho Park, looked at the reports with wide eyes. He whispered, 3 colonies. Simultaneous attacks. No survivors. Tae-ho's weathered face remained perfectly calm, but inside he was calculating. 3 colonies attacked at exactly the same time, all with the same tactics. This wasn't the work of pirates or criminals. This was military planning at its finest. His fingers drummed against the metal desk as he thought. The aliens had made their move. They had declared war without actually declaring war. They thought they could wipe out human colonies and make it look like random attacks. "Activate Protocol Omega," he said quietly. "Send word to all colonies." Lieutenant Park's face went pale. "Sir, that's a wartime protocol." Tae-ho looked at the screens showing the destroyed colonies. Somewhere in those ruins were the bodies of children who would never grow up, parents who would never see their kids again, and dreams that would never come true. "I know what it is," he said, his voice as cold as winter ice. "They wanted to test us. They have no idea what they've awakened." The truth was, the aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak because they preferred peace. They thought humans were defenseless because they didn't build weapons on every world. But they had never studied human history very carefully. When humans were pushed too far, they didn't just fight back. They became something else entirely. Captain Minho Choi had seen many terrible things during his 15 years in the Space Navy, but nothing had prepared him for this. His investigation ship moved slowly through what used to be the New Busan colony, and everywhere he looked, there was only death and destruction. Pieces of buildings floated in space like broken toys. A child's bicycle drifted past the ship's window, its red paint still bright against the darkness. Minho had to look away. He had 2 kids of his own back on Earth, and seeing that bicycle made his heart ache. Captain, his communications officer, called out, "We're getting readings from the debris field. It's not good." Minho knew it wouldn't be good. The colony had been home to 12,000 people. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children. Now it was just floating metal and memories. Beside him stood Kathura, the Kathura liaison officer. She looked like a giant praying mantis with 4 arms and huge compound eyes that could see in all directions. Her kind had been allies with humans for several years, and she was one of the few aliens who actually cared about what happened to human colonies. Kathura's mandibles clicked together nervously as she studied her scanner. This was how her species showed emotion. The faster the clicking, the more upset she was. Right now, her clicking was very fast. "The weapon signatures are consistent with Zephyrian plasma cannons," she reported. Her translator device made her insect-like speech sound like perfect Korean. But the coordination suggests Council involvement. Minho felt his stomach drop. If the Galactic Council was behind this attack, it meant the situation was much worse than anyone had imagined. The Council was supposed to keep peace in the galaxy, not destroy innocent colonies. At the pilot station, Lieutenant Eugene Park was running detailed scans of the attack site. She was young, barely 25, but she was one of the best tactical analysts in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls as she gathered data. "Captain," she said, looking up from her console with a worried expression, "I'm detecting something strange. The attack patterns. They're too precise for pirates. Pirates were usually sloppy. They came in fast, grabbed whatever they could, steal, and left quickly. They didn't waste time making sure everyone was dead. But this attack was different." "Show me," Minho ordered. The holographic display in the center of the bridge lit up with a 3-dimensional map of the attack. Red lines showed where the alien ships had moved, and yellow dots marked where they had fired their weapons. The pattern was perfect, mathematical even. Kathura's antennae twitched nervously as she studied the display. This was no random raid. This was surgical elimination. Alien ships had hit specific targets in a specific order. First, the communication center, so no one could call for help. Then the power plant, so the colony's defenses would shut down. Then the residential areas, making sure no one survived to tell the story. They knew exactly what they were doing, Eugene said quietly. They had detailed maps of the colony. They knew where every building was, where every family lived. Minho stared at the holographic display for a long moment. This wasn't just an attack. It was a massacre. Someone had planned this very carefully, and they had made sure there would be no witnesses. Captain Kathura said, her clicking becoming even faster. "My people have been monitoring Galactic Council communications. There have been unusual activities, secret meetings, classified orders." Minho nodded grimly. The pieces were starting to fit together. The Council's sudden hostility toward humans, the perfectly coordinated attacks, the military-grade weapons, it all pointed to one terrible conclusion. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command," he ordered. "Use the quantum encryption. Tell Director Kim we have confirmation." Eugene's fingers flew over her controls, establishing the ultra-secure connection that would take his message directly to the military headquarters beneath Seoul. Minho paused, looking one last time at the debris field that had once been a thriving human community. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of teachers who would never teach again, children who would never grow up, and parents who had died protecting their families. "And tell him to prepare for Phase 2, he added, his voice cold as space itself. Kathura looked at him with her compound eyes. "Phase 2? What is Phase 2? Minho's smile was not pleasant, something the Council should have thought about before. "They decided to kill our people." The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was a place designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, and the walls were covered with symbols from dozens of alien civilizations. Floating platforms held the delegates from 47 different species, each one thinking they were the most important beings in the galaxy. Today, however, all eyes were focused on one small human woman standing at the center of the chamber. Ambassador Yoon Soo-yoon had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 8 years. She was barely 5 feet tall, with graying hair and kind eyes that usually sparkled with warmth. But today, those eyes were cold as winter steel. She stood perfectly still as hundreds of alien eyes stared down at her. The silence in the chamber was heavy and threatening. Most humans would have felt intimidated, but Yoon-soo had faced down alien diplomats before. She knew that sometimes the smallest person in the room could be the most dangerous. "We know what you did," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the massive chamber. The translation devices made sure every alien could understand her words in their own language. "We know what you're planning." Her eyes moved slowly across the alien faces, meeting each gaze without flinching. She saw the Zephyrian delegates. Scaly green face, the Vortharies' crystal form that glowed with inner light, and the Nexaries' metal bodies that hummed with electronic sounds. "This is your only warning," she continued, her voice growing harder. "Stop now, or face the consequences." The Zephyrian delegate burst into laughter. It was a harsh, reptilian sound that echoed through the chamber like breaking glass. "Empty. Threats from a species barely capable of interstellar travel," he hissed, his yellow eyes gleaming with amusement. Other aliens joined in the laughter. The Thrakri delegates, who looked like massive bears, growled their approval. The Nexari chimed in with their bell-like voices. Even some of the smaller species seemed to think the human warning was funny. The Vorthari representative's crystalline form shimmered with what could only be described as amusement. When these rock-like beings found something funny, their entire bodies would glow and sparkle. "You forget your place, human. You exist at our sufferance." This was the moment that many alien historians would later mark as the beginning of the end. The moment when the Galactic Council made their biggest mistake. Yoon-soo's expression didn't change at all. She had expected this reaction. Humans had been underestimated before, and it never ended well for those who did the underestimating. "We forget nothing," she said quietly, "and we forgive even less." Behind her, Colonel Dong Wuhan stepped forward. He was a tall, serious man who had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. His military uniform was perfectly pressed, and his medals caught the light as he moved. "The Korean Earth Defense Force speaks for all of humanity," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Consider this your final warning." The laughter in the chamber died down as the aliens realized the humans were completely serious. But instead of backing down, many of the delegates seemed to become even more hostile. "Final warning?" the Zephyrian delegate snarled. "You dare threaten us? We could crush your entire species without breaking a sweat." "Your pathetic little colonies are already burning," added the Vorthari representative. "Soon, your home world will follow." Yoon-soo and Colonel Han exchanged a look. They had expected this reaction too. The aliens thought they were dealing with a weak species that would beg for mercy. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. Without another word, the human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence as dozens of alien eyes watched them leave. In the Cathara section, Cathara watched the humans go with growing concern. Her compound eyes could see things that other aliens missed. She had studied human history, learned about their wars, and understood their psychology better than anyone else in the chamber. She turned to her aide, speaking in her own clicking language so the translation devices wouldn't pick up her words. "They're not just angry," she whispered, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "They're ready." "Ready for what?" her aide asked. Cathara's mandibles clicked together rapidly. "For war. Real war. The kind that changes everything." The industrial world of New Daegu looked like any other human colony from space. Factories dotted the landscape, smoke rose from manufacturing plants, and cargo ships moved goods between the orbital stations and the planet's surface. To the Zephyrian fleet approaching the world, it seemed like an easy target. Fleet Commander. Vasktar studied the planet through his ship's sensors. According to his intelligence reports, Udegu had only basic defenses, a few patrol ships, and some ground-based weapons. Nothing that his 50 warships couldn't handle easily. "Begin the attack," he ordered, his reptilian voice filled with confidence. Same pattern as the agricultural worlds. Hit them fast, hit them hard, leave nothing alive. The Zephyrian ships descended through the atmosphere like deadly birds of prey, their weapons charged up, ready to turn another human colony into ash and rubble. Vasktar expected this to be over in less than an hour, but deep underground in a bunker that didn't appear on any public maps, Lieutenant Commander Hyojin Kim was watching the alien ships approach with a smile on her face. The command bunker was a marvel of human engineering buried 300 feet beneath the surface. Protected by layers of armor and energy shields, it had been built in secret over the past 2 years, along with dozens of other hidden installations across the colony. "All units, this is Watchtower," Hyojin spoke into her headset, her voice calm and steady. "Execute defensive pattern Alpha. Happen next would be talked about in military academies for generations to come." The supposedly defenseless colony suddenly came alive with weapons. Hidden missile batteries emerged from fake hills and disguised buildings. What looked like normal factories opened up to reveal massive gun turrets. The ground itself seemed to split open as defensive positions that had been invisible moments before it began firing at the alien ships. "What the hell?" Vaska screamed as his lead ships were hit by weapons that shouldn't have existed. His sensors were going crazy, showing human defenses everywhere he looked. But the real surprise came. From space, ships that had been reported destroyed weeks ago suddenly materialized from asteroid fields and hidden bases. They had been waiting there the entire time, powered down and invisible, just waiting for this moment. The stealth carrier Asterisk Sejong, the Great Asterisk, decloaked right in the middle of the Zephyrian formation. It was a massive ship, bigger than anything the aliens had expected humans to possess. Its hull was covered in weapons that no alien had seen before. On the bridge, Admiral Seung-min Lee watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. He was a veteran of several border conflicts, but he had been planning for this fight his entire career. "They thought we were scattered and weak," he said to his tactical officer, Captain In-ho Park. "They have no idea we've been preparing for. This day, since we first left Earth, the human ships moved with perfect coordination, like dancers performing a deadly ballet. They used tactics that the aliens had never seen before, ships that could turn invisible, weapons that could bend around obstacles, and strategies that seemed to anticipate every alien move." Captain In-ho Park's fingers flew over his controls. As he coordinated the attack, "Sir, their lead ships are breaking formation. They're trying to retreat." "Don't let them," Admiral Lee ordered. "I want every ship in that fleet either captured or destroyed. No one goes home to report what they've seen here." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Vastar was in complete panic. Half his fleet was already gone, and the humans were still coming. His weapons couldn't penetrate their shields, and his ships couldn't match their speed. How is this possible? He screamed into his communicator, trying to contact his superiors. Intelligence reported minimal defenses. Where did these weapons come from? But there was no answer. The humans had jammed all communications, cutting the Zephyrian fleet off. From the rest of the galaxy, they were alone, facing an enemy that had been ready for them all along, far away on Earth. In the command bunker beneath Seoul, Director Taeho Kim watched the battle through live feeds from New Daegu. The screens showed Zephyrian ships being destroyed one by one, their crews never knowing what hit them. "Phase 1 complete," he announced to his staff. "All colonies are now hardened targets. Begin Phase 2. His aide looked at him with confusion. "What's Phase 2, sir?" Taeho's smile was cold and dangerous. "Phase 2 is where we stop playing defense. Phase 2 is where we take the fight to them." The sleeping giant had awakened, and it was very, very angry. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Universal Time, the galaxy changed forever. In secret bases hidden throughout space, human fleet commanders received the same message. Operation Righteous Fury is a go. For months, the aliens had thought they were hunting scattered human colonies. They believed humans were weak, disorganized, and easy to destroy. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first colony ship left Earth, Admiral Jae-soon. Kim stood on the bridge of the battleship Turtle Ship, watching as his massive fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, 200 human warships hung in the darkness of space like sleeping predators. These weren't the small patrol ships that aliens expected humans to have. These were true warships, built in secret shipyards and hidden in asteroid fields across the galaxy. All ships. This is Admiral Kim. He spoke into his communicator, his voice carrying to every human vessel in the fleet. Today we teach the galaxy that humanity does not forgive, and we do not forget. The fleet jumped to hyperspace as one, leaving behind only empty space and the echo of their engines. Their destination was the Zephyrian homeworld, the heart of the empire that had started this war. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian home system, Admiral Scar was enjoying a quiet morning in his command center. The reptilian officer had been celebrating the successful attacks on human colonies, thinking the war was already won. His defense fleet was scattered across the system. He was confident that no human force could threaten their mighty homeworld. Then the sensors started screaming. "Sir," his tactical officer shouted, his voice filled with panic. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. It's a massive fleet. Scar looked at his screens in disbelief. 200 human ships had appeared in his system, as if from nowhere. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The ships themselves were unlike anything the aliens had seen before. "Where did they get these weapons?" he whispered in horror. Commander Yuzhen Li's destroyer squadron was the first to engage. Her ships moved in perfect formation, using weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The gravity cannons on her destroyers could fold space itself, creating tiny black holes that tore through Zephyrian shields like paper. To target their command ships first, Yuzhen ordered her pilots. "Let's show them what happens when you mess with our people." The Zephyrian defenders tried to fight back, but their weapons seemed primitive compared to what the humans were using. Energy beams that should have destroyed human ships simply bounced off their shields. Missiles that should have hit their targets were deflected by invisible force fields. Captain Hyenwoo Park's stealth frigates struck from impossible angles. His ships could turn completely invisible, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. They would materialize right next to a Zephyrian vessel, fire their weapons, and vanish again before the aliens could react. How are they doing this? Star screamed at his officers. Technology should be centuries behind ours. But the real shock came when his communications officer turned to him with a pale face. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. The humans aren't just attacking us." "What do you mean?" "Simultaneous strikes on Vor 3 industrial centers, Nexari supply depots, and Thrakari fleet bases." "Sir, they're hitting everyone." "Who participated in the colony attacks?" Star's blood ran cold as the truth hit him. The humans hadn't just been sitting quietly while their colonies were destroyed. They'd been watching, learning, planning. Every alien communication, every military movement, every secret base, the humans had been tracking it all. "They've been watching us," he whispered, "learning from us. All this time, while we thought we were hunting them, they were studying us." The battle for the Zephyrian homeworld was over in less than 4 hours. The mighty defense fleet that had protected the system for centuries was reduced to scrap metal floating in space. The humans had demonstrated technology that was decades ahead of anything the aliens possessed. But the most terrifying part wasn't the advanced weapons or the superior tactics. It was the coordination. Across the galaxy, human fleets were striking at exactly the same time, hitting precisely the right targets with perfect timing. Admiral Kim watched from his bridge as the last Zephyrian ships surrendered. "Phase 2 complete," he reported to Earth Command. "All primary military targets neutralized, awaiting orders for Phase 3. The aliens had awakened something they didn't understand. Humanity hadn't just learned to fight, they had learned to fight smart. And now, the galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed humans too far. The war that the aliens thought would last days was about to become their worst nightmare. The sleeping giant wasn't just awake, it was angry, organized. and ready to remind the galaxy why humans had survived every challenge their homeworld had thrown at them at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. Universal time, something happened that would change the course of galactic history forever. In hidden bases scattered across the galaxy, human fleet commanders opened sealed orders that had been waiting for this moment. The message was simple. Operation Righteous Fury is authorized. Execute immediately. For weeks, the aliens had been celebrating their easy victories against human colonies. They thought they were dealing with a weak, scattered species that could be picked off one settlement at a time. They had no idea that every attack had been carefully monitored, every weakness catalogued, and every alien military position mapped with deadly precision. Admiral Jae-Soon Kim stood in the command center of the massive battleship, Turtle Ship, watching as his fleet prepared for the largest human military operation in history. Outside the armored viewports, he could see 250 human warships floating in perfect formation. These weren't the small patrol vessels that aliens expected humans to have. These were true instruments of war, built in secret shipyards, hidden in asteroid fields and dead systems across the galaxy. All ships, this is Admiral Kim, he spoke into his fleet communicator, his voice carrying to every human vessel preparing for battle. Today, we teach the galaxy that humanity does not forgive, and we do not forget. The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, human fleets that had been hiding in empty space suddenly came alive. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels revealed their true nature. Asteroid mining stations opened up to release squadrons of fighters. Even some of the destroyed colonies turned out to be elaborate disguises, hiding military bases. The primary target was the Zephyrian homeworld, the heart of the empire that had started this war by destroying innocent human families. Admiral Kim's fleet jumped to hyperspace as one massive unit, leaving behind only empty space and the promise of justice in the Zephyrian home system. Admiral Scare was having what he thought would be a pleasant morning. The reptilian commander had been celebrating the successful attacks on human colonies, believing the war was already won. His defense fleet was spread out across the system in a relaxed patrol pattern, confident that no human force could threaten their mighty homeworld. Then his sensors exploded with activity. "Sir," his tactical officer shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. "It's a massive fleet, bigger than anything we've ever seen." Star looked at his tactical display in complete disbelief. 250 human ships had appeared in his system as if they had materialized from thin air. But what shocked him even more was the ships themselves. They were unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. "Alert all defense platforms," he ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Scramble all available fighters." How did they get so many ships past our scouts? The answer came quickly as the human fleet moved into attack formation. The clumsy, slow vessels that alien intelligence had reported, these ships moved with the grace of dancers and the precision of surgeons. Commander Eugene Lee's destroyer squadron was the first to engage the Zephyrian defenders. Her ships used weapons that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. Gravity cannons mounted on her destroyers could fold space itself, creating miniature black holes that tore through alien shields like tissue paper. "Focus fire on their command ships," Eugene ordered her squadron leaders. "Let's show them what happens when you murder our families." The Zephyrian defenders tried to fight back, but their weapons seemed primitive compared to what the humans were using. Energy beams that should have vaporized human ships simply bounced off their advanced shields. Missiles that should have found their targets were deflected by invisible force fields that the aliens couldn't even detect. Captain Hyon Woo Park's stealth frigates struck from angles that should have been impossible. His ships could become completely invisible to all known forms of detection, appearing and disappearing like ghosts in the void. They would materialize right next to a Zephyrian vessel, unleash devastating firepower, and vanish again before the aliens could even target them. How are they doing this? Star screamed at his technical officers. Their technology should be centuries behind ours. Where did they get these weapons? The answer was simple, but terrifying. Humans had been studying alien technology for decades, improving it, combining it with their own innovations, and creating something entirely new. While the aliens had grown comfortable and lazy, humans had been working. But the real shock came when his communications officer turned to him with a face drained of all color. "Sir, we're receiving emergency transmissions from across the galaxy. The humans aren't just attacking us." "What do you mean?" "Simultaneous strikes on Vor3 industrial centers, Nexari supply depots, Thrakari fleet bases, and Nexari communication hubs. Sir, they're hitting everyone who participated in the colony attacks." S blood ran cold as the terrible truth became clear. The humans hadn't just been sitting quietly while their colonies were destroyed. They had been watching, learning, planning. Every alien communication, every military movement, every secret base, the humans had been tracking it all. "They've been watching us," he whispered in horror, "learning from us. All this time, while we thought we were hunting them, they were studying us like laboratory specimens." The galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had become a battlefield, and humanity was winning, across thousands of star systems. Alien military bases that had stood for centuries were being systematically destroyed by human forces. What had started as a simple plan to eliminate a few human colonies had turned into the aliens' worst nightmare. Fleet Admiral So Young Kim stood in the command center of the massive mobile battleship Admiral Yi Sunsen, watching the war unfold across dozens of holographic displays. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, a floating fortress that could coordinate military operations across the entire galaxy. It had been built in complete secrecy over the past 5 years, disguised as a civilian space station. Report. "From all sectors," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. The responses came in from human commanders across the galaxy, each one bringing news of another alien defeat. Commander Minjae Park's voice crackled through the speakers first. "Zephyrian home fleet neutralized. Their capital ships have been destroyed, and their remaining forces are in full retreat. Vor3 crystal foundries secured," added Captain Yoonji Lee from the industrial sector. "We've captured their main manufacturing centers. They can't build new ships or weapons without these facilities." The reports kept coming, each one more devastating to the alien cause. "Nexari Communication Hub captured," announced Major Jungu Park. "We now have access to their entire intelligence network. Sir, we can see everything they're planning before they even know they're planning it." Admiral Soyoung Kim nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what humanity had been working toward. While the aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species, humans had been studying their weaknesses, learning their tactics, preparing for the day when they would need to fight back. The truth was, humans had always been better at war than the aliens realized. Earth's history was filled with conflicts that had taught humanity how to adapt, survive, and win against overwhelming odds. The aliens had made the mistake of thinking that peaceful humans were weak humans. Meanwhile, in what remained of the Galactic Council chambers, surviving alien delegates huddled together in fear. The great assembly hall that had once been filled with the proud representatives of 47 species now held only a handful of terrified aliens. Cathara, the Cathara representative, stood among the rubble where the speaking platform used to be. Her insect-like form was perfectly still as she addressed the few delegates who remained. "We tried to warn you," she said, her clicking voice filled with sadness. "We told you what would happen if you pushed humans too far, but you wouldn't listen." The remaining Zephyrian delegate, his scales now dull with fear, spoke up. "How could we have known? They seem so weak, so scattered." Cathara's compound eyes fixed on him with something that might have been pity. "That's exactly what we tried to tell you. Humans don't just fight back when they're attacked. They adapt, they learn, and they never forget. You didn't attack a species. You attacked a force of nature." The Vor3 representative, his crystal form dim and cracked, whispered, "But their technology was supposed to be centuries behind ours." "You underestimated their ability to learn," Cathara replied. "While you were celebrating your superiority, they were studying every piece of alien technology they could find. They took your weapons, your ships, your strategies, and they made them better." Suddenly, a new voice filled the chamber. It was being broadcast on every communication channel in the galaxy, reaching every alien ship and station simultaneously. All alien fleets. This is General Woojin Kim of the Human Defense Force. The voice was calm, professional, but carried an undertone of absolute authority. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. This is your only warning. The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, alien commanders stared at their communication panels, unable to believe what they were hearing. A species they had dismissed as primitive was now dictating terms to the entire galactic community. In the command center of the Admiral Yi Sun-sen, Admiral So-young Kim watched the countdown timer on her main display. 60 seconds. 59. 58. Sir, one of her officers asked quietly, what if they don't surrender? Admiral Kim's expression was stone cold. Then we finish what they started. Didn't want this war, but we're going to win it. The timer continued to count down and across the galaxy. Alien species that had ruled for thousands of years faced a choice they never thought they would have to make: surrender to humanity, or face complete destruction. The tide hadn't just turned, it had become a tsunami. And humanity was riding the wave. The once mighty Galactic Council chambers looked very different now. The beautiful crystal walls were cracked and scarred from the fighting. Many of the floating platforms where alien delegates used to sit were empty or destroyed. Outside the massive windows, human dreadnoughts hung in space like silent guardians, their weapons trained on the station. Admiral Sujin Kim walked into the chamber with slow, measured steps. Behind her came a small group of human officers, their uniforms crisp and their faces serious. The sound of their boots echoed in the vast space that had once been filled with the proud voices of 47 alien species. Now, only a handful of alien delegates remained. They huddled behind their podiums like frightened children, their eyes wide with fear as they watched the humans approach. These were the same aliens who had laughed at humanity's warnings just weeks ago. It's the same ones who had ordered the destruction of innocent human colonies. Admiral Kim stopped in the center of the chamber and looked around at the surviving delegates. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, but carried the weight of absolute authority. You have two choices, she announced, her words echoing off the damaged walls. Immediate surrender and reparations, or total war. Choose wisely. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. The alien delegates looked at each other with desperate eyes, hoping someone else would speak first. Finally, the Zephyrian delegate, the same one who had demanded the destruction of human colonies, stepped forward. His green scales, which had once gleamed with pride and arrogance, were now dull with fear. His voice shook as he spoke. We surrender. Please, have mercy on our civilians. Admiral Kim's expression softened just slightly. Despite everything that had happened, despite the thousands of human families that had been murdered, she still felt compassion for innocent beings. Humanity does not make war on children, she said firmly. We never have, and we never will. Our terms are simple and non-negotiable. Full reparations for the murdered colonists, complete disarmament of all aggressive military fleets, and the establishment of a new galactic order based on mutual respect rather than fear. Colonel Byung-ho Park stepped forward, carrying a tablet containing the formal surrender documents. He was a veteran of many conflicts, but even he had never imagined he would be present for the surrender of an entire galactic civilization. Sign these documents, he said, his voice carrying no emotion, and the killing stops immediately. Refuse, and we finish what you started. The threat was clear, and every alien in the chamber understood it. Human fleets were stationed throughout the galaxy, waiting for orders. If the aliens refused these terms, the war would continue until there was nothing left of their civilizations. Cathera, the insectoid representative who had tried to warn the other aliens about humanity's true nature, stepped forward from her position. Her compound eyes looked directly at Admiral Kim as she spoke. The Cathera Collective agrees to these terms without reservation, she announced, her clicking voice filled with both sadness and relief. We should have supported humanity from the beginning. We knew what would happen, but we were too afraid. to stand against the others. Admiral Kim nodded to Cathara with something approaching respect. Your people tried to warn them. That will be remembered when we discuss the future. One by one, the surviving alien species came forward to submit to human authority. The proud Vorthri, with their crystal bodies dimmed and cracked, signed with trembling hands. The massive Throckeri, whose bear-like forms had once struck fear into their enemies, now bowed their heads in defeat. Even the technological Nexori, whose metal bodies hummed with electronic despair, accepted the human terms. Each signature represented not just a military defeat, but the end of an era. Thousands of years, these species had believed they were superior to all others. They had ruled the galaxy through fear and force, never imagining that a young species from a small blue planet could challenge their dominance. As the last signature was placed on the surrender documents, Admiral Kim looked around the chamber. One final time. War didn't have to happen, she said quietly. We offered you peace. We asked for nothing more than the right to exist and grow. You chose violence instead. She paused, letting her words sink in. But unlike you, we believe in second chances. Follow the terms of this agreement. Treat all species with respect, and there will be peace. Break these terms. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The human dreadnoughts floating outside the windows were a reminder enough. The age of alien supremacy was over. The age of human leadership had begun. 5 years had passed since the galaxy's bloodiest war ended, and the changes were remarkable. Where once there had been fear and hatred between species, now there was something that many had thought impossible: hope. The memorial gardens on New Busan colony were beautiful in the afternoon sunlight. Cherry trees from Earth grew alongside, crystalline flowers from Vorthri worlds, creating a garden that represented the new unity between species. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter as children played among the flowering paths. Ambassador. Haewon Kim walked slowly through the gardens, her heart both heavy with memory and light with hope. She had been one of the survivors of the original colony attacks, hidden in a shelter while her world burned around her. Now she served as humanity's representative to the rebuilt colony, helping to heal the wounds that war had created. The children playing nearby were a sight that would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago. Human kids ran alongside young Zephyrians, their scales bright and healthy. Cathara younglings clicked and chittered as they played games with Vorthri crystal children whose bodies sparkled in the sunlight. The war that had started with hatred between species was ending with a new generation that saw differences as interesting rather than threatening. At the center of the garden stood a black stone wall covered with names, thousands of them. These were the colonists who had died in the attacks that started the war. Men, women, and children who had never harmed anyone, killed simply because they were human, below the names. Carved in letters that caught the light were the words, "They warned you." We remembered. It was a simple message, but it carried the weight of history. The aliens had been warned about what would happen if they harmed innocent humans. They had laughed at those warnings. They had learned too late that humanity's memory was long and their justice was absolute. Director Changmin Park approached through the garden paths, carrying a data tablet filled with reports from across the galaxy. He had been promoted to administrator of the Galactic Confederation, the new government that had replaced the old council. Unlike the previous system, this one was built on cooperation rather than domination. The reconstruction of the Zephyrian agricultural worlds is ahead of schedule, he reported, his voice filled with satisfaction. Their children are learning Korean alongside their native language. Many of them want to study on Earth when they're older. Haewon smiled at this news. In the Vorthri Crystal Gardens, thriving beyond all expectations, Changmin replied. They've actually requested human botanical experts to help them expand their growing techniques. It seems our farming knowledge is just as valuable as our military technology. In the distance, a group of teenagers worked together on what looked like a science project. The group included humans, Zephyrians, Cathara, and even a young Vorthri, whose crystal body sparkled as he moved. Their different alien physiologies presented no barrier to their friendship as they laughed and shared ideas. This was the real victory, Haywan thought. Not the military conquest or the surrender documents, but this young beings from different worlds working together to build something new. Cathara approached them, her insect-like form moving gracefully through the garden. She now served as the Cathara ambassador to the Confederation, one of the few aliens who had kept her position after the war. Her people had tried to warn the others about humanity's true nature, and that loyalty had been remembered. "Your species continues to surprise us, Administrator Park," she said, her clicking voice filled with genuine admiration. "We expected conquerors, but you gave us partners instead." Changmin nodded, watching the mixed group of teenagers as they worked on their project. "We warned them what would happen if they harmed our people, but we also promised them a place in the galaxy. If they chose peace instead," he gestured toward the playing children, "this is the future we're building together." The setting sun painted the garden in golden light, casting long shadows across the memorial wall. The names of the dead seemed to glow in the fading light, a permanent reminder of the cost of hatred and the price of underestimating humanity. But the real message of the memorial wasn't about revenge or war. It was about memory and choice. Humanity would never forget the innocent lives that had been lost. But they had also chosen to forgive those who were willing to build a better future. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their advanced weapons or their tactical brilliance. It was their ability to turn enemies into friends, to find hope in the darkest moments, and to build bridges where others saw only walls. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the children continued to play in the garden, their laughter echoing among the memorial stones. They were the future, a generation that would grow up knowing that differences could be celebrated rather than feared, and that the galaxy was big enough for everyone who chose peace over war. The age of human leadership had begun not with conquest, but with compassion, and that made all the difference.